we have a bride that's gotten in her dress. Now, very, very important before the bride gets into the dress is that she understands exactly what to be doing once she gets out here. Okay. So generally, before the bride goes back to get dressed, I will tell her, I said, listen, just go to the next room, or I'll step out and you stay here. That's actually the best situation because you can actually leave them in the good light. Just let them get dressed here. And sometimes I can sneak a couple shots. Not of the bride in the nude, but sometimes just the slipping on the dress without showing, you know, obviously anything that's not wanted in the film. It's kind of dramatic. It's very nice if you can get those types of shots. Her reaching up to grab the dress and pull it down, those are also great shots. So always kind of be on your toes. Obviously, I'll leave for the stuff that she's not comfortable having a camera inside there with, but definitely give her instructions. So if she were to leave the room, I would tell her, I said, listen, get dressed just up until the point where you're comfortable with us coming into the room, us meaning video and photo. And she'll say, okay, because I still want to get the laces in the back. The zipper is very fast. I definitely prefer laces because it takes so long and you can get so many shots if they do have like a button up or a lace up. But sometimes they just have a zipper, and if it's just a zipper, then the getting dressed segment is it's very fast, and you don't have time to kind of bounce around and get different shots. So I'll instruct her also, don't put on any jewelry, because once she's in her dress, if you didn't have a lot of time to get the getting ready stuff, because maybe she had a zipper, at least if she's, you know, putting on her earrings, I think it looks very flattering for a girl, very nice. If she's putting on the earring in nice dramatic lighting with her beautiful wedding dress on, same thing with a necklace. You could have somebody else, maybe her mom or her sister or somebody close, put the necklace on. And this really is just, it's more content for the film. You're always looking for more content. So whether she's getting dressed, putting on earrings, putting on a necklace, putting on a bracelet, whatever the case may be, it's more content. It's all I'm looking for is more shot. It's not a matter of, you know, is she put her earrings on? I don't even care about this stuff. I just need more content. I need more content than somebody just pulling up a zipper on the back of her dress. So with our luck, the lace up did not work, but we have the zipper, but that's great. Because we have jewelry, which is also great. And I think the jewelry looks, you know, very sexy, very, very nice, you know, when the bride's putting that on. So the other thing that I'm gonna tell the bride is, once you're in your dress, I need you to come out into my light rather than stay back there. Because sometimes maybe there's a table back there and the hair and makeup person is now back there touching her up, and maybe she just starts doing that type of stuff there. And I don't need that. I need her always where the good natural light is so we can work. So she's gonna come on out now. And then the best thing to do with the bride is just to kind of mimic where you need them to be. Rather than give this whole long explanation, I would just tell them, listen, when you come out, I just need you to stand here, right where I'm at, facing this way, okay? And always look towards the light, because sometimes they'll look back into the room to the unexposed areas. The simplest instructions you can give them is always find the light. Look towards the light. You know, if you're gonna look over your shoulder, look towards the light. If you're gonna look back at your bridesmaids, back towards the light, you know. So, and sometimes you're gonna have to give them some verbal direction. At this point, you're definitely gonna have to give them some verbal direction, because they may be standing there a little bit lost in the moment, you know, and they're just like, oh my God, there's so many people around, what do I do? Is that me? Oh my God.
Do you want me to zip her up for you when you get ready for the shot, or do you want her to try to zip it up?
No, I'm gonna have you help me out.
And is she in the right position for you?
Actually, she is, but I'm gonna have you angle towards the light, just like that, perfect. So let's get set up again.
So from Giona Silva, she says, Ray, do you ever stabilize your monopod shots later in post? I find that my monopod shots are often a bit shaky. And what other resources do you use to help keep stable shots during your shoot?
Yeah, I definitely stabilize a couple shots here and there in post. If they're a little bit, you know, if you're shaking a little bit, or just trying to maintain a shot and there's a little vibration in there or shake or anything. Yeah, it's very easy to go in there just with a stabilizer plug-in and just stabilize the shot. There's nothing, listen, there's nothing wrong with fixing it in post. You just don't want every shot to have to be fixed in post. I try to shoot it right, so I can minimize the amount of filters that I have to add in post. But yeah, I've definitely done that to where I've stabilized my shots in post.
Okay, but you don't ever frame with the idea that you potentially will have to do a lot of stabilizing in post. Does that
No.
make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're asking. I do have shots sometimes, maybe not during preps, but maybe like say during a ceremony, where I'll frame it a certain way, knowing that I need to leave myself enough room to where if I stabilize it, because it's going to punch in on the shot, so I'm going to lose some real estate on the shot. So I've got to compose my shot accordingly, that type of thing.
Awesome, thank you.
Cool. All right. So I will probably keep my 100 lens on, and you can just help her out and adjust her with the dress. And this is great. She's still in some nice lighting here. And remember, always checking focus. And here I've got a static shot, and she's all happy. There you go. And I can pan down. I can get some hands in there. I can pan up, and now I'm going to kind of see both of them. So once you have the shot, remember, keep moving. Can you just keep adjusting her back there the way you were? Yeah. And here I can introduce kind of like a movement shot. So I can practice this a couple times. And I probably wouldn't do it with 100 because it's too challenging. I'll probably get the 50 on here. But I can still get some shots here. You can pan down the dress, see some detail. And if you need anything from the bride at this point, like if you thought it would be cool, like if she looked over her shoulder, just ask her. You know, it's okay at this point just to start giving her some verbal direction because she's really just there, maybe waiting for some commands. Is Jamie? Jamie? Okay. So just stand there kind of looking at the light. And can you just be behind her, almost like if you were adjusting her dress, yeah. And Jamie, can you just like look over your left shoulder down? Yeah, just like that. Perfect. Perfect. So you seen how I gave her some verbal direction? And I didn't tell her to do anything. She just naturally smiled when she saw the makeup artist, right? It's just natural emotion. So you're evoking emotions, but you're not telling them to do anything specific because those types of instructions would just generate something that's fake. You know, it's just contrived. And I'm really just looking for natural emotions. So just stay back there. And this is real life situation. She may have a zippered dress, and it's just going to end so fast. And then say like, you know, her friend or her relative, they're just going to want to leave. And I'll ask them. I said, can you just stay there a second? Just kind of fluff the dress. There's always something to do, like some type of adjustment with the bride's dress, so it's okay. If you need a shot to kind of complete your sequence, it's okay to ask. You know, just ask. Don't be shy. A lot of this job is really being assertive. And if there's something that you need, just ask for it. Especially like if it's going to be like a little quick sequence that they're doing, you may need a little bit of time just to work. Especially if you want to change lenses and compose different shots. So here, yeah, just looking just like that.
Should I put a jewelry on?
Just in a second. So here, and just looking off your right shoulder. Here you go, and down. Perfect. So little commands I can just give her, just looking over your right shoulder and down with your eyes. Because these commands that I give her, you're never going to see it, you're never going to hear them in post. You're just going to see these beautiful movements of the bride. You know, and this is the time that's really your time to be creative because we're visual artists, and this is really our time. You know, so and you're going to see same thing with great photographers. Great photographers, they give great verbal direction, and they're able to have their clients be relaxed on camera. But if they're not doing what the photographer needs, they give them some verbal direction. We have to do the same thing because we are trying to create stunning imagery, and a lot of times that stuff is just not. It's just not happening. Yeah, so we can go with the jewelry. Don't put it on her just yet. And if something's going to happen and you kind of want to get the beginning of the movement, just have them hold on until you're ready. You know, until you compose your shots. So this is so difficult because it's not just like taking a picture, it's like, you have to get set, you have to focus, you have to check focus, you have to record, you have to make sure everything's perfect in the shot, and then you record the shot. And then you have to record the shot for however long it is. So here, let's see what kind of shot we can get. And
I turn it so you could
yeah, I'm gonna have you stand like right here and just angle towards the light a little bit, right there. Yeah, that's fine. And I'll tell you when, hold on. And here, let's see what we can get. And remember, I check focus on everything, so, and go ahead. Okay, so just get a quick shot. Hold on before you clasp it. Just give me a second. And this has got nice details, so make sure you check focus right on the details. Could you loosen it and then bring it up? Yeah, just like that. Remember, check your exposure always. Exposure and focus are the two main things that are going to mess you up here.
Ray, you ready for a question while you're shooting?
Yeah.
Awesome. So the question is, do you shoot with sequencing in mind?
Stay there.
And then I'm going to add to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you make shot lists? Do you have in your pocket a sort of a...
I don't have a shot list, but I definitely try to get like 2, 3, 4 shots related to the same sequence here. And I can do I can do like 3 to 4 seconds here. I can do 3 to 4 seconds here. I can do a panning shot. So these are all different shots. So I'm getting 2, 3, 4 shots without even having to move here, just panning. I can come in, I can do, and just stay there adjusting a little bit. Did you have earrings you were going to put in? Oh, she doesn't. Okay. What else was there? Just a necklace? Okay. Okay. And yeah, keep adjusting there.
So another question, Ray. We talked about if the bride's not happy or she's not smiling, and you've made comments like just be happy or
Right.
smile, which is pretty casual. But if you're in the room while the bride is getting ready and she's really stressed out, a couple of people had asked this in different ways. What do you say to the bride, or what can you do? Because you're in such close proximity to her.
Yeah.
And a lot of times while the bride is getting ready is when she's the most stressed out, because so many things have to come together and
Yeah.
they relax later. But do you have a comment that you make or something
Yeah.
more that you say?
I just recently had a wedding last weekend where the power went out at a very, very high-end wedding. The power went out for about 7 hours, so they couldn't plug in blow dryers. What's the machine they used for the curling irons? Everything, and it was hot. This was in Palm Beach, Florida. So it was hot, it was muggy, and there was no power. And they'd spent a lot of money on this wedding, and now there was no power at all until about 6:30 p.m. at night. And we'd been there since about 11 in the morning with no power. So how do you think the bride was? A little bit stressed? So you have to approach this situation very carefully, because this is the bride's dream day, and it's basically becoming a wreck. Okay, so now what do? You almost have to play therapist, because what happens when a bride gets stressed? What happens when anybody gets stressed? Your muscles tense up in your face. And do you know that they stay like that until they finally relax? And that takes a little bit of time. And they're just stressed. The bride's certainly not going to be looking her best. She's not going to look happy. It's going to be a very difficult situation, and you really have to approach that almost like a ticking time bomb, because you could just say one thing that could just devastate the bride, and she could go into tears. So you have to be very careful. The situation that I had was the hairstylist, he had a salon. So he said, just come to the salon. We'll do your hair there, where there was power, and then we'll do your makeup there. And then I was like, no, that's not a good idea, because the salon is going to have yellow lights and lamps and mixed lighting, daylight with tungsten lights. So it was just a bad situation. And the bride was already stressed. She had already cried. So it was a very bad situation. And I had to tell the bride, it's not a good idea for you to do. The hair's fine if you want to go to the salon and do the hair, but to do the makeup in the salon is not going to be, it's not going to be a good idea. And we had already found a spot for her to do the makeup, and they didn't need anything with electricity anyways. We found a good, cool spot with nice natural light coming through, but the bride was still stressed. She was very stressed, and it was a mission to get her back to the spot that we needed her to be in for bride preps. So you have to be very careful. Now, I can tell you this, you have to kind of, you kind of read your clients. You have to be able to read the bride. If you're giving her some verbal instructions and you see that she's kind of like not into it, just lay off. It's not worth it. It's not worth being creative to upset a bride, because you're never going to get what you want, because it's always going to look bad. She's going to look stressed, she's going to look upset. As soon as I kind of sense that maybe she's overwhelmed by the photographers, and if I see that, I say, you know what, I'm not even going to go there, because she's already stressed out. So you got to kind of know when to leave it alone. If she's happy, she's still in the spirits, and she's loving it, play. Listen, if a bride wants to get creative, we're all about being creative and fun and getting all these cool shots and things like that. But if she's shut down and she's stressed and she's not feeling it, just learn to leave it alone. It's not worth it, So that particular bride, I told her to calm her. I said, look, we got everything we need. We're still going to have a beautiful ceremony, still going to have a beautiful reception. You're still going to do a first look, which they did. It was very fast, though. I mean, you have to be prepared, because some of these events, they're going to throw all these monkey wrenches at you, and it's going to become very stressful. This event, I can tell you, there was about 40 seconds of bride slipping in her dress. 2 minutes later was first look. A minute later was like 3 or 4 candid shots. 2 minutes later was a ketubah signing. And like 5 minutes later was a ceremony. And we had to basically do all this stuff within 10 minutes. It was crazy. We hadn't even set up audio for the ceremony. So, but you have to be prepared. We all want to do these big extravagant events and things like that. But I tell you, they're a lot of work. It's a lot of stress. Nobody knows each other, so it creates a lot of different monkey wrenches. And then if the power goes out for 7 or 8 hours, forget about it, And it was funny, because the bride just called me this week, and she said, Ray, did we get everything we need? Because she was so into video, and she loved the video, and she definitely want to make sure that, and she even gave us a schedule with so much buffer room in there, that she called me during the week this week. And she's like, did we get everything? And I said, look, we got everything. We even got some candid shots. We got the first look. We got the ceremony, reception. The words spoken at this wedding, one of the best I've ever heard in my life. So I told her that. She got really excited. I said, if I'm being honest with you, the only thing that we kind of missed out on, because they were at a beautiful venue, was the candid shots. And she goes, can we do a post shoot? And I said, if you do that, you're going to have a home run. So now we've scheduled an after shoot where we're going to go back to the same venue. We're going to get all these beautiful shots with great weather, and it's done. So there's always ways around it, things like that. So, but never stress. To answer the question, don't stress the bride ever. Just it's not worth it, because you're just never going to get that type of imagery that you're looking for with a stressed bride.
Okay, cool. Maybe another question from the studio audience?
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you work quickly, efficiently, so that you have time for lots of shots. But how do you know when you're done with a sequence? How do you know when you need one more shot? Or how do you know when it's time to move on and go shoot the dress and the shoes and step away?
You'll almost feel it. You'll almost be like, if you think about the shots that you have, and sometimes I'm even I'm clicking through the shots that I have. Like I'm reviewing, or photographers call it chimping, to see like what shots you have. I'm clicking through my shots to see what I have, and then sometimes I have so many where I'm just like, oh my God, this is enough. I have to get details now. I have to get the shoes, I have to get the dress, or I don't have enough dress. Maybe I get a ring shot. But as far as bride makeup and getting dressed and things like that, I have more than enough. Now, one of the things that I will do just for some eye candy, and a lot of times when she's done getting dressed and things like that, the photographer is going to do some portraits of her looking very beautiful. And I do the same, because this is one of these moments, especially like if they're not having first look or anything like that, or maybe the candids are going to be very limited. I'll try to get at least 2 or 3 shots of just the bride looking very beautiful. I'll put her over next to a really beautiful light. Maybe I'll get a couple of those shots now before we close. And I'll tell her exactly what I need. And never make the bride work. I always move stuff out of the way. I move her chair, I adjust it, never, this is her day. Never require her to do any physical activity. So I'm gonna I'll just have you stand here and just kind of look out the window. What's your husband's name? I'm sorry. Jamie. You're? Nina, okay. Jamie, Nina, okay. So just think about Jamie. Just kind of, you can kind of almost peek around the little curtain there. So I'll give her a little bit of direction, just a couple of things that I'm looking for with these shots. And the only things I'm really looking for is just a couple, 2, 3 shots of her looking really beautiful. Because what's going to happen is, in the film, there's always beautiful words being spoken about the bride's beauty. So if you tie in a couple beauty shots to those words spoken, it could be very powerful in the film. So that's the only purpose of these shots. They serve no meaning or anything like that. They're unplanned. They're not scripted in a timeline or anything like that. It's just literally for some eye candy that I can tie together with some of the words being spoken. Yeah, that's fine. Remember, check your exposure. Make sure everything's looking good. Check focus. This is literally the most important thing. And just looking down at your dress. And you see that slight little verbal direction I gave her? You're never going to hear it, but you're going to see it. Looking down at your dress. And then out the window. Perfect. Did you see that? Just very quick verbal direction. Looking down at your dress, looking over the window. And I'm anticipating my own shot as I'm panning. I already know what I want to see in my shot. So I'm giving her this little, in advance, this little verbal direction. Okay, looking down at your dress, looking out the window, things like that. And then the shot just rolls out perfectly. So once I get a wide enough shot, I'll come a little bit closer so I can tie in some stuff. Yeah, same thing, just kind of looking out the window there. And looking up towards me. And out the window, just like that. That type of thing. And some of these shots, you just kind of play around with. Brides look, they look very, very sexy. Like anything that you shoot is going to look really nice in the film. Even if you're not showing her face and you're just showing kind of details in the accessories and in the dress and things like that. We're not like photographers where they document everything. They document every detail. The dress, the shoes, the place cards, the invitations, all this stuff. We can shoot in a way that's just very dramatic and sexy and beautiful and not really revealing the entire image, and we're okay because it's the motion that's creating the interest in the clip. So you don't always feel like you have to show the entire image the whole time, because if I just showed like the entire bride, the entire bride, the entire bride, the entire bride, it's really, even though it's a beautiful bride, it becomes uninteresting. It just becomes stale because the viewer's already seen it. And we have a very short attention span as viewers. We constantly want to be fed cool, new, interesting information that we've never been fed before. Because once the brain's been fed that information, it's done. On to the next thing. We want to see something different. The brain is just hungry for new information. Once it's kind of processed that old information, it's done. It's already in the memory banks. But they've never seen the details all up and close and personal, or her eyes or her lips and things like that. So just keep everything constantly changing and interesting. And stay there one last second. I'll get a couple more shots. I love using the mirror because there's really nothing else in the room. But generally, you'll have other things in the room that you can use as foreground. Even people, I can do rack focuses. So if this was like a real live shooting situation, you'd have so much footage because there's so much other things going on besides the bride doing makeup and hair. You have interactions, you have bridesmaids and parents and nieces and all these other things, gift exchanges, letter writing, vows writing, speech writing, all these things. So you're gonna have much more content than what we have today. But we're still doing pretty good on content.
You mentioned earlier about wedding planners, and I know at the level of filming you do, probably almost all of your weddings have a planner. But before you were at that level and there wasn't a wedding planner at the wedding, did you spend a lot of time helping the bride plan out the day just to make your day easier? How did you deal with that? Because a lot of the weddings that I'm doing have no wedding planners, and the brides are attempting to make their own plan, and it just seems like a lot of times those fail. So how did you deal with that?
I'm glad you asked that question. Did you know that I was a wedding planner? I'm a wedding planner. I planned the bride's wedding. You guys didn't know that? I'm not really a wedding planner. But if you're in a situation where there's no wedding planner, it's even better. Because guess what? I have weddings where there's no wedding planner. I become the wedding planner. So what happens? I create the schedule. I don't create the latter half of the schedule like post-ceremony. I create the pre-ceremony schedule, for sure, hands down. I create all the timing, and I said, listen, if you want to run on time and be comfortable on your wedding day, and us be able to get all the shots, the photographer be able to get all the shots, I recommend that you kind of follow this guideline as far as the timing of the day and things like that. Because now, what have you done? I don't really care about the planning of a wedding. I care about basically setting a perfect stage for me. And as far as timing and things, I don't want to be like fighting the clock. So now that I've created my own schedule, that schedule's catered to me. It's like the greatest thing in the world. So if you don't have a planner, the best thing to do is ask them. I'll ask them. I said, listen, do you have a wedding planner? And I always recommend a wedding planner because I want the bride to enjoy the day. And I don't want the bride or even her mom. I've had moms that planned the wedding come up to me after the wedding and tell me, Ray, I don't remember anything. I didn't enjoy today because I was so busy trying to tie up this and tie up that and plan the wedding that I didn't enjoy it. And now I have to wait to like watch it in the film. And I don't like that to happen. So I always recommend that they not only get a planner, they get a good planner that knows their stuff. Because a good planner is going to give you a really good schedule. And a good planner is going to keep things structured and on time and things like that. So it's always better to have a planner. But if they don't have a planner and you can become the planner, it's a great situation. You know, I said, listen, if the ceremony's at this time, you should be starting makeup at this time. If there's a first look involved, you should be doing first look at this time. Because I already know based on what? Based on our own experiences, right? We've all been to weddings where it was so relaxed because the schedule was perfect, right? And we've been to weddings where we were stressed out because there was no time to do anything. That was a bad schedule. So I always draw from those good weddings where everything was relaxed and the schedule was perfect. There was plenty of time. The bride wasn't stressed. I try to draw from that. I said, listen, I've been to weddings where if you follow this time guideline based on what you're doing, it's going to be perfect. So just become the wedding planner. It's the best thing because you're basically planning the wedding, not for the wedding, you're planning for yourself, you know, so that you're going to have enough time to do what you got to do. And the bride's going to be relaxed. And she's not going to run late, which is always great. So now we're going to talk about the first look. How many of you guys have done first looks before? Never? Never?
No, we're in the South, we're traditional.
Okay, traditional. That's the key. But what have we done with wedding cinematography? We've kind of like, we're breaking tradition. Slowly but surely, we're breaking tradition. Because traditionally, they never used to have first looks, right? I don't remember back when I started, anybody doing first looks. But now it's become so common, and it really is such a great moment. But you do have some brides from the South that are traditional, right? And they don't want their man to see them before the ceremony. And I have brides like that. Most of my brides that I encounter, they'll tell me, I'll ask them, are you doing a first look? Oh, no. Oh, no. He's not seeing me till I get to the church. And I said, okay. What time's your ceremony? Oh, 7 p.m. I said, okay, great. What are you going to do right after the ceremony? Oh, we're going to take family pictures. I said, okay. And what are you going to do right after that? Oh, we're going to do some candid photos. And I said, it's going to be dark out, right? And then they go into shock. When are we going to do photos? Like together, candid photos, right? So they're like, oh my God, what do I do? I said, you do a first look. Take care of the photos before the ceremony. That way, after the ceremony, you can just enjoy cocktail hour and then go on to the reception, and you have all your candid shots. But not only that, you have what? Another amazing moment. Besides the point where the bride's coming down the aisle, right, and the groom's seeing her for the first time, now you have this intimate setting where he's seeing her for the first time. And I tell the bride, I say, listen, one situation has nothing to do with the other. Just because of the fact that he's going to see you at the first look, it has nothing to do with the setting at the church. Because at the church, he's seeing you for the first time in front of like 300 people, and he's seeing you for the first time being walked down the aisle by your father. I mean, the nerves are completely different. The butterflies are still going. And I've had grooms an hour after the first look crying like babies when the bride comes down the aisle. So it's a completely different environment. It's a completely different setting. So I try to just get the bride at ease and really try to get her thinking about doing the first look, because the first look is so advantageous, and there's no drawbacks to doing a first look. Not a single one, unless you're a traditional bride that's just set on the fact that you don't want him seeing you before the ceremony, and that's right, and that's fine. And I always tell the bride, this is very important. You never want to change their vision for the wedding. The only thing that we do as professionals, because we're all experienced and we know what looks good, right? We just offer suggestions. I just offer food for thought, and I tell the bride, I say, listen, I'm just going to offer you some food for thought based on the things that I know are going to look great. You can either take them or you cannot take them, but at the end of the day, I don't want to change whatever your vision is for your wedding. I don't want to change that. So be very careful not to kind of be so overwhelming with your requests, or suggestions that she just gets kind of scared that you're going to change her whole day and her whole vision and things like that. So just merely, same thing with lighting and same thing with when we're doing bride preps, we're just offering suggestions on things that are going to make her and this groom look their best. And trust me, most people want to look their best. So 99% of the time, or 100, you're going to get what you want. You just have to kind of educate them and let them know why they maybe should think about doing a first look, because maybe they're getting married at night and they still want to take with them all these memories of them passing time together in beautiful natural sunlight when they were dressed like this, with a great tux and the bride in her beautiful dress. So talk to them a little bit and explain to them. I always explain to them the advantages of doing a first look, because I'll tell you, most, especially the grooms, like I tell you before, this is all about the party for them. They just want to hang out with their boys and drink and have fun and party. And then they usually tell the wife, they say, listen, just tell me where to show up, what time, and I'll be there. That's their kind of approach to this whole wedding day. Whereas the bride, it's not like that. This is the main event of their life. This is one of the main events of their life. It's so important. It's something that they dreamed about. So to them, it's so much more important. So when the groom's sitting with her with the bride, and he's like, I don't know about this first look thing. And I said, well, think about it. Instead of doing photos, you can go drink with your boys before the reception. Oh, man, I'm down with the first look. So all of a sudden, you got the groom right away. As soon as you tell him he can go drink with his boys during cocktail hour, you got the groom. Now you just got to work on the bride a little bit. Now here's the thing with the bride. When you do the first look, this is one thing. It guarantees that the bride's not going to be late to the ceremony. It's a guarantee. Because she's already dressed. Her makeup's already done, because she's doing all these photos before the ceremony. So number one, it's impossible that she's late to the ceremony because of lack of makeup, or she's not dressed, or she doesn't have her accessories on, or anything like that. It's done. Number two, say she does all these photos, they see each other. Beyond the great moment that you're going to have for film, if she does all this stuff, she does all the photos, and she has an extra 30 minutes to spare before the ceremony, it's only a good thing, right? Because now she can do what? She can relax. She can get touched up. She can refresh. She can unwind. She can get ready for this big ceremony. Now, if she's fighting the clock, right, and she's going to be late to her ceremony, what's happening? It's creating stress. And the stress is creating unflattering imagery for you, for her, these memories, okay? So it's kind of easy to talk them into a first look situation, especially if they're getting married at night. If they're getting married at night and you can't talk them into a first look, you have to just restructure your approach, because that should be one of the easiest things to negotiate, is a first look if they're getting married at night. Because honestly, unless they're doing an after shoot after the wedding, they're not going to have any candid moments together, not in natural light. And if they're spending a lot of money to get married in this grand place that's got this this majestic views, and the architecture is just phenomenal, and it just looks amazing, you can't see that at night. at all. They could be getting married at the Holiday Inn across the street, and you wouldn't know the difference, you know, because it's nighttime. So I'm definitely a proponent of first looks. Number one, why? It's going to give us more content, and really, really good content. Especially when you do the first look, you think about miking up the groom, because what happens when they meet? There's beautiful words that are being spoken. That's major content. Beyond the visual eye candy stuff, like the shots that we're using our own creativity to get, when you get words being spoken, that's much better than the visual eye candy. All day long, that's better, that's more compelling than the visual eye candy, because when they're watching the film, they're actually being connected to what's going on, right, from that wedding day. It's not like visual eye candy where it's just kind of, you know, it's sprinkled over music and things like that. Audio connects them to what's going on. That's why we do time shifting, and we use speeches and vows and letter writings and all this stuff, because we want to add interest, but we want to connect the viewer to the film. So first looks is a great way to connect the viewer to the film. So you talk to the bride, you convince them to say, you know what, maybe we'll do a first look now. Great, okay? And a lot of times, why do a lot of brides do first looks? What has already convinced them to do a first look? Even the traditional ones. They've seen it in your work. They've gone on your website, they've looked at a film, and they're like, when did they do this? It looks like he saw her before the ceremony. They're like, yeah, that's the reveal or the first look. It's like, it looks beautiful. It's gorgeous. And I highly recommend, but I don't want to change the vision of your day, but it's a great idea. And I explain why it's a great idea. So you really have to, you got to baby that first look, because I always want a first look situation. Photographers always want a first look situation, because a lot of times they have a list of all these family members that they have to photograph during formals and all this stuff, and the bridal party, and they still want to do candids, and they're just so limited on time that they're also a big proponent of the first looks, at least the ones that I work with. So you've convinced the bride to do this first look. She's seen it in your work. You know, a lot of brides draw ideas from what they see in your work. I can't tell you how many the wedding I was at last week, they hired the rabbi because they saw him in one of my films. And this guy is so eloquent when he spoke. The words he speaks are just beautiful. And they're like, who's that rabbi? I want the rabbi. You know, like, I get this rabbi so much business just off, and he actually has one of my films running on his website, because it's just, this guy is like a dream for a storyteller, for a filmmaker, you know, editing this movie together, because he's so well paced, his voice is so rich, and he's eloquent, and he actually, during his service, he tells a unique story about the couple, right? So basically what he does is he sends, he has the groom write down his feelings about the bride and why he wants to get married and spend the rest of his life with this girl. And then he has the bride do the exact same thing, but he reads it at the ceremony. And the way that he reads it is just like, wow, to have that. And that's why I tell you the importance of audio is just, it's so critical, because imagine if you didn't have that audio, or nice, rich audio of this rabbi. So audio is just so important, but also important is inspiring your brides. You know, they're inspired by things that they see in your work, whether it's first look, whether it's personal vows, even gift exchanges. I remember one time, I had a bride ask me, she said, is my wedding going to go on your website? You know, like the highlights or whatever? And I said, I don't know. I haven't even filmed your wedding yet. And I started to explain to her that, you know, to really do a highlights and a film, we need a lot of content. You know, so the highlights doesn't look like a repeat of the film or vice versa. So she goes, what do you mean content? And I said, well, you know, sometimes, you know, you get to these weddings and they have like personal vows, they do a first look, they do gift exchanges, they do letter writing, they do all this stuff. And I left it at that. And then a year passed by and I was at the wedding, and I'm at Bride Preps and I'm filming, and the bride's like in beautiful natural light, and I hadn't even adjusted anything, in a high chair, and everything's just gorgeous, and a really gorgeous bride. And I looked over and I saw one of the bridesmaids, and she's like in perfect light, she's sitting on a couch and she's writing out her speech for the night, right? And I was just like, and I'm bouncing around the room and I'm in heaven, I couldn't believe it. So then I look across this way and I see like the maid of honor, and she's in perfect light and she's steaming the dress like this, almost like scripted. And I was just like, this is crazy. And I swear to God, this is a true story. They start doing gift exchanges, letter writing, speech writing, writing vows, I mean, the makeup, the whole bit. And I was like, wow. And then finally, one of the bridesmaids, she asked me, she says, Ray, are you getting enough content today, for the film? She asked me just like that, and I had totally forgot the conversation I had with the bride, a year earlier, and I started laughing. I could not believe it. But I literally had more content than I'd ever had, because she basically got all the bridesmaids and maid of honor on the same page as far as natural light and content. She basically educated them in what I had educated her at the consult. So they do listen, and trust me, they're inspired to wear. It's just like a bride that gets a certain Vera Wang dress or a certain Louboutin shoes, whatever they're called. Maybe she's seen those and she's been inspired. She's seen a certain wedding cake. They're very inspired by our work and things that they see in pictures and video. And I've had a lot of brides use a lot of the same music, for their first dance, for instance, like that I've used in one of my highlights. I'll see it in their first dance. I'll see it at their ceremony. A lot of things, a lot of these ideas, like it's like going on a wedding inspiration site and drawing that inspiration for your own wedding. They're doing the same thing with our work. They're seeing it in your work and they're like, wow, I want my wedding to be just as beautiful. Maybe if I do a lot of the same things, I'll have the chance to have, a film that has all these beautiful things. So trust me, they're drawing inspiration from your work and they're seeing things that are kind of giving them the ideas. And then they're even asking me like, hey, what was this that this bride did and what was that this bride, and things like that. And in the end, every wedding is going to be unique because you'll always have different people, different personalities, a different environment, different decor. So it's never going to look the same. They may do some of the same things, but it should never look the same. All right? So let's talk about my favorite thing to do. One of my favorite things to do, because it's just a content builder, besides preps, is first look. But what's one of the problems? How's that look up here? No, it's a little blown up. What's one of the problems we have during first looks? Outside, anything outside. We talked about this earlier. Lighting. It's bad lighting. It's harsh lighting. It's usually 2 o'clock lighting, 3 o'clock lighting, 4 o'clock lighting. It's not that magic hour, that beautiful lighting that we're looking for. So you have a lighting issue. So you always have to make sure that whatever your camera angles are, we're going to discuss camera angles here in a few minutes, that every angle kind of has nice, as best as possible, you have nice even lighting. So in this situation here, this is perfect lighting for this groom. This monitor is a little bit overexposed, but you don't see any shadows. You don't see any of the effects from the hard light, right, that's coming from up above. And behind him, I've got all this green stuff that's kind of blocking all these blown out areas from that harsh sunlight. So this is the front angle. And this is the result. And you can see as the bride's coming, she's nice and evenly lit. So you have to consider every angle. And then this is another angle. And you'll notice, I'll go through another one. You don't see the side angle here, but I'll show you a side angle on another one. Generally for the first looks, I'll set up 2 cameras. I'll have one that's kind of shooting long from in front of the groom back to where the bride's making that long walk, and then I'll have one on the side. Now the reason that I have one on the side is this groom is going to ultimately turn away from my camera, and I'm just going to have his back. So I need a camera that kind of gets both side profiles, and that's where the side, and I love to have that camera just be static because I don't want that camera moving. And like I told you before, we've all seen it. If we have a second camera person, they have the tendency to kind of fiddle with the camera or maybe move the camera or make some adjustments that we just don't need. We just need to set that camera, compose it from the get-go. So you always have the groom out there first, so I'll check lighting. Generally, if it's hot, I make my assistant the groom, and I'll just say, stand here. I think, Alex, did we do that? Yeah. One of our attendees here in the live studio, he actually came out and helped us with a shoot here in California. And same thing, he could tell you, I used him. He was basically the stunt double for the groom. And I had him there, and I positioned him where I wanted the groom to be positioned. I checked the lighting to make sure the lighting was going to be okay, that it wasn't going to be overexposed. And once I was ready and the spot was set, I brought in my main player, which was the groom. Because you don't want the groom out there being hot and uncomfortable and going through this whole pre-preparation of the first look. You kind of just want to leave him alone, let him be relaxed. But you need to know like exactly where you're going to need him to stand in relation to your camera and the type of lens you use and whatnot. Here's another one. Now this one was unique because the light was so harsh outside and there was no shade, there was nothing. We actually took them inside of the building, just inside the building, but it was open to the outside, right? So it still had the natural light coming in, and as you can see the lighting there, it looks great. It's nice and dramatic. It's not so flat. And this is his future wife. And I was actually, even though what's behind her is blown out, I was actually able to do some silhouette stuff here, which looked very dramatic. And I'm always going for the more dramatic look in my work, using the lighting to create dramatic imagery. That's what I'm looking for. So here, now she's coming down, and you can tell she's well lit the whole time. And then at some point, I'm even going to get her reflection in the mirror back there as she's coming down the stairs. So you can think of all these things as you're setting the shot. And here's when they meet. And you can see as the groom turns away and faces the bride, now they're both evenly lit. Okay? And look at the reaction. You want to just leave this moment alone. You never want to give any type of verbal direction for a first look, because the whole reaction that's going to be happening is so natural and so compelling. The last thing that you want to do is mess with this moment. I mean, there's no verbal command for what you're seeing here. This is just like, wow. And, just the happy emotions of her seeing this groom for the first time. Now imagine, look at this. Imagine not having these shots for your film, right? Is it kind of a shame, for that bride not to have this intimate moment with her future husband? I mean, it's almost like an injustice not to have these, or lose out on this, because guess what? When she came down the aisle, the groom was crying. So now you have another beautiful moment. But just imagine ripping out this content from your film. It's really just an injustice. Now here's another one. This was really tricky, because if you notice on the floor there's spots where it's blown out, then it's shade. Blown out, then it's shade. And this gets really, really tricky. And of course, the background on the other sides was all blown out. So now what do you do? So now basically what we were doing here was we were using the Brado Party and that building back there to kind of block out that harsh light. But then you still had a problem because he's under a tree and the sun's kind of creaking through the trees and creating this mixed light situation where you have areas that are overexposed, and then you have shaded areas and it's overexposed and shaded. So you definitely want to have him in the exposed area and not a shaded area, because what happens is if you have him in the shaded area and you try to expose his skin, it's just going to really, really blow out what's already blown out. So it's going to create a very bad situation. But here we had him in pretty even lighting. And you can see here, we're kind of using this background here as a canvas. Because what happens is, if the camera was still just a little bit this way, it was all blown out on this side because there was nothing to really block out the sun. So here we're using all this as a canvas to kind of block out that harsh light. And you can see how even and soft the lighting is on him, which is going to be great for when the bride comes up. And now we have, this is New York City, so now we have all the other photographers, the amateur photographers out there, but that's fine. And you see nice even lighting. And when he turns, they're both going to be very well lit together. And this is in a very bad situation. I tell you, most of these situations that I've just shown you were all bad situations where there's very harsh light out. And I tell you, most of the situations that you're going to deal with is all harsh light. It's all very blown out. You have mixed lighting situations. You have underexposed, overexposed. So it's just finding spots that kind of not only work for you, but they also have to work for the photographer. Okay, remember, solid shooting, because you have to be solid. And this is my rules for solid shooting is tripod for anything that deals with dialogue, monopod for everything else. The only time you have to be really on a tripod, or at least have one shooter on a tripod, would be for speeches and ceremony. Anything that deals with dialogue, even first looks, because sometimes there's some dialogue involved. I've done first looks on a monopod, so it just depends what you want to do. Now, if you want to battle a 70 to 200 on a monopod and do rack focuses and all that, that's going to be very challenging. So it just depends what your style is and what kind of shots you're going for. If you just have a 50 on your camera and you're not going to be doing many rack focuses, you could probably get away with even doing a monopod for a first look. Actually, the wedding last week that I told you about where the power went out, I did first look on a monopod because it was very fast. You didn't even have time to set up a tripod. It just get it and go. So you have to be prepared that sometimes you're going to end up in situations that are not perfect, and you're going to have to deal with them because you still have to be able to capture the first look. Would I prefer to have been locked down on a tripod? Of course, but you just deal with it, and hopefully you're well versed enough with a monopod to where you can hold a semi-solid shot. And like some of the audience members asked about stabilizing filters, just drop a stabilizing filter on there. Just make sure you leave yourself plenty of room in your frame to where it can kind of punch in if it needs to. And that's it. Did you guys have any questions in regards to the first looks? Yeah.
When you do the first look, are you setting that up or does the photographer set it up?
I will set it up, but I will make sure that it's kosher with the photographer. If the photographer has an idea in mind, and here's the thing, most of the weddings that I go to, I already scout this stuff in advance. So I'm basically predetermining the spot, and then I'll get with the photographer and I'll say, hey, I got this great spot. So I've basically done the work for the photographer, and they love that. Unless they just have this idea in their mind where they have to do it somewhere else, but I've never seen that happen, where they say, no, I definitely want to do it somewhere. In fact, last week, the photographer had already scouted the area and the place where we wanted to do the first look. It was just not very good. And he was a traveling photographer. He was actually flown in from New York, so he didn't really know the venue like I knew the venue. And I was like, this is okay. I know a better spot. And then he was like, let's take a look. And then I went over there, I showed him each angle, and he's like, this is the spot, okay? So sometimes, if you talk to them and you sound like you know what you're doing a little bit, they might listen to you, so you can come to a compromise, Now listen, if he just had his own idea on the first look or where it should happen, you have to understand a first look is live. It's kind of like, it's one of those times during the day where it's motion video, things are happening, words are being said, there's a lot of activity going on within the frame, whereas for a photographer, a first look may only mean a couple of photos, whereas for us, this is a very critical part of our film is the first look because there's so many different elements involved, so many different emotions, words being spoken, visuals. So for us, it's a lot more important than a photographer that's just getting a couple photographs. But maybe that photographer's got a better idea than you have. So it's always good to listen, scout it out. If you can come to an agreement together, as long as the lighting's good, honestly, and I've got some natural, even lighting, I don't care where they do the first look. Even the photographer or whoever has an idea. Now, the last thing you want is to have a wedding planner control where your first look happens. And I've had venues that I showed up to, and the wedding planner says, oh, my brides do the first look here. And it's like in the worst possible situations, like indoors on a staircase where there's like no lighting, and it's not a good situation. And you just really have to assert yourself in that situation and say, that's fine, but today, your brides will do it this way, because we've been hired to do it a certain way, and it wasn't that way, that type of thing. So you just have to be careful. But I've had situations where, maybe there's a wedding planner there or a coordinator, and they kind of have like their own ideas, but they're not the cinematographer. They've got no background or experience or anything like that, and they're not responsible for producing the film. So you got to kind of know when you need to make certain command decisions and not let other people interfere with what you got to do. Any other questions?
We have questions online. So a question came up from Kobe. Kobe wanted to know, do you ever retake the first look just so you can have different angles? Would you ask her to walk back out? I know you wouldn't exactly capture the same emotion.
Yeah, so there are times, and we'll see a film later on, I think like on day 3, where I'll do some glide cam stuff. I will take a glide cam stuff behind them. I think on the shoot that we did with Alex, we did a glide cam shot. And the reason that I don't do the glide cam shot live is because you're going to be in everybody's shot. Not only yourselves, but you're going to be in the photographer shot and things like that. So you have to be considerate. You have to kind of compromise and say, you know what, let's just be solid for the actual first look, because we'll capture the emotions, we'll capture the words, which is the most important thing. And then after that, if we want to get creative and get a couple candy shots, some visual eye candy, we'll do it afterwards. It's not a big deal. Now, you want to make sure, if you're going to tie that into your sequence of the first look, that you do it right away. Don't let the couple leave this spot now and start doing photos and things like that and then try to get them back, because it's just going to waste too much time. You literally have to say, if you have it in your mind that you're going to get like a creative shot that you want to tie together with the first look, you got to do it right now. Say, hey, tell the photographer, say, hey, listen, before you move them, let me just get one shot real quick. Take like 30 seconds, and you get the shot. And then you just move on from there. But yeah, we definitely we'll definitely tie in some shots, especially like a GlideCam shot, because it does raise production value. And as you'll see in that film, the way that we used it in the first look, it's a cool looking shot. Did you see it? Yeah. So it looked good?
It looks real.
Huh?
Looks real.
It looks real, exactly. If you tie it in, and that's the reason you want them to do it right then without moving, because they're kind of still in the zone of the first look. I don't actually have them meet a second time, because that's just fake. That's not like the real actual emotions. The only thing I want is the bride actually making the approach and walking up to the groom. So that's kind of a thing that I love to do, because it's such a dramatic shot. It's visual eye candy. It raises production value, and it's nice up close and personal. But I still remember, what do we have to do with the bride to make it look real? What do we have to do? We have to evoke emotions, right? I have to getting them in the zone. So I have to coach them. I said, listen, I'm gonna get a closer shot of you, but I'm gonna walk with you. With the GlideCam, I just want to get a different perspective. But as you're walking up, it's got to be like the first time you walked up. Like you love this guy. Just really get him in the zone, and just concentrate on him. Think about him. I want you to be happy and natural and all this. So now, like when you're walking with this bride in the GlideCam, she's got this look on her face of anticipation, because she wants to see this guy just like the first time when they met. And now you can easily tie that into your sequence, because what happens is, if she was happy on the approach on the original one, and then on the second one she's just like, she's just kind of like walking normal, you're going to have a tough time kind of tying that together. So that's why it's important always to try to evoke some emotion, to get her back in the zone, get the emotions flowing naturally again. That's really the purpose of evoking emotions, is to get them acting natural again and let them know, hey, it's okay to be on camera. It's okay just to be yourself again, and just be natural and happy and anxious to see him again, that type of thing. And they're always anxious to see him again, because face it, it's their wedding day. They should be happy. There should be tons of smiles and love and laughter and things like that. Let's bring out our groom. Handsome young lad. All right. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.